The dusty saloon fell silent the moment Olivia Grant walked through the swinging doors, and every man there felt like she could see straight into the parts of themselves they kept hidden. Great Bend, Kansas had never seen a woman quite like her. The year was 1878, and the small frontier town had grown accustomed to weathered ranch wives and soiled doves who worked the saloons, but Olivia was something different entirely. She wore a simple traveling dress the color of storm clouds, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun, and she carried herself with the kind of quiet strength that made grown men shift uncomfortably in their boots. But it was her eyes that unnerved them most, pale green like creek water over smooth stones, and when she looked at you, it felt like she was reading every secret you had ever kept. "She's got a way of looking right through you," muttered Tom Brennan to his card partner, not even bothering to keep his voice down. "Makes a man feel naked." His friend nodded, both of them watching as Olivia approached the bar. The bartender stammered through, offering her water, his face flushing red when those eyes settled on him. She thanked him quietly, her voice low and melodic, then asked about lodging for the night. "Miller's boarding house, madam," the bartender managed, 2 streets over. Olivia nodded, paid for the water with coins from a small purse, and left as quietly as she had arrived. The moment the doors swung shut behind her, the saloon erupted in conversation. "Unnatural, that is," declared Pete Harrison, a ranch hand from the Double K. "No woman should look at a man like that, like she knows every damn thing you've ever done wrong." "Maybe she does," someone else offered, and nervous laughter rippled through the room. What they did not know was that Olivia Grant had come to Great Bend for a very specific reason. 3 months ago, her younger brother Samuel had left their home in St. Louis to make his fortune in the Kansas cattle trade. His letters had arrived regularly for the first 2 months, filled with excitement about the opportunities and the wild freedom of the frontier. Then, the letters had stopped. When Olivia's inquiries to the local marshal went unanswered, she had packed a bag, withdrawn her small savings from teaching school, and boarded a train west. She would find Samuel, or she would find out what happened to him. The way people looked at her, the discomfort her direct gaze seemed to cause, none of that mattered. Olivia had learned long ago that most people could not handle being truly seen, and she had stopped apologizing for her ability to read the truth in their faces. Miller's boarding house was a 2-story structure that had seen better days, but the proprietress, a stout woman named Margaret Miller, seemed kind enough. She showed Olivia to a small room on the 2nd floor, accepted payment for 3 nights, and mentioned that dinner would be served at 6. "You traveling alone, dear?" Margaret asked, concern evident in her weathered face. "I'm looking for my brother," Olivia replied. "Samuel Grant. He came to Great Bend about 3 months ago, looking for work in the cattle business." Margaret's expression shifted, something flickering behind her eyes that Olivia caught immediately. Fear, worry, and something else, something like pity. "I don't recall the name," Margaret said, but she was lying. Olivia could see it in the way her gaze slid away, in the tightness around her mouth. "Are you certain?" Olivia pressed gently. "He's 20 years old, brown hair, about this tall." She held her hand up to indicate Samuel's height. "He has a scar on his left eyebrow from a childhood accident." "I'm sorry, dear. I see so many people come through." Margaret backed toward the door. "Dinner at 6. She left quickly, and Olivia sat on the narrow bed, frustration and worry warring in her chest. Something was wrong here, something people were afraid to speak about. She would need to find someone willing to talk, someone who would not shut down the moment she started asking questions. The next morning, Olivia began her search in earnest. She visited the general store, the telegraph office, the land office, and every business establishment she could find. Everywhere she went, the response was the same. People would start to answer her questions, then her eyes would meet theirs, and they would shut down, suddenly claiming they knew nothing about Samuel Grant or any young man matching his description. "Try talking to the mountain man," a young clerk at the general store finally suggested, his voice barely above a whisper. He glanced around nervously as if afraid of being overheard. "Ethan Everett. He lives up in the hills north of town, but he comes down for supplies every few weeks, brings in furs and game. He sees things other people miss. If anyone knows what happened to your brother, it might be him." "Where can I find him?" Olivia asked. "He was in town yesterday, so he probably won't be back for a while. But you could ride out to his place if you're brave enough. Follow the north trail for about 10 miles until you reach the fork by Lightning Creek. Take the west path up into the hills. His cabin is near the top of Eagle Ridge. You cannot miss it." "Why would I need to be brave?" Olivia asked, studying the clerk's face. The young man swallowed hard. "Ethan Everett is not like other men, madam. He's been living alone in those mountains for near about 5 years now. Some say he's touched in the head from too much solitude. Others say he can track a ghost and shoot the eye out of a hawk at 100 yards. He's big, real big, and he doesn't take kindly to visitors. But if you want answers, he's your best chance." Olivia thanked the clerk and left the store. She had no horse, so she would need to rent one. The livery stable owner, a grizzled man named Joseph, tried to talk her out of the journey. "That's rough country, miss. Not safe for a woman alone." "I can ride well enough," Olivia assured him. "I need a reliable horse for the day." Joseph studied her for a long moment, and Olivia met his gaze steadily. Whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. "I'll give you Daisy. She's sure-footed and even-tempered. But you be careful up there. Ethan Everett is a strange one." By mid-morning, Olivia was riding north out of Great Bend on a sturdy bay mare. The landscape opened up around her, endless prairie grass rippling in the wind like a golden ocean. The sky stretched wide and blue overhead, broken only by a few lazy clouds. It was beautiful in a stark, lonely way, and Olivia understood why Samuel had been drawn to this country. The ride took longer than she expected. The trail was rough in places, and she had to let Daisy pick her way carefully through rocky sections. By the time she reached the fork at Lightning Creek, the sun was past its zenith. The creek itself was running low, just a trickle of water over smooth stones, but she could see where it would swell during spring rains. She took the west path as instructed, and the landscape began to change. The flat prairie gave way to rolling hills, then steeper inclines. Pine trees appeared, growing thicker as she climbed. The air grew cooler, fresher, carrying the scent of evergreen and something wild. Eagle Ridge was aptly named. The climb was steep, and Olivia had to dismount and lead Daisy for part of the journey. When she finally crested the rise, breathing hard from the exertion, she saw the cabin. It was larger than she had expected, built from solid logs with a stone chimney at one end. A lean-to shelter stood to one side, protecting a neat stack of firewood. Behind the cabin, she could see a small corral with 2 horses, both of them larger and more powerful than typical riding stock. Everything about the place spoke of competence and self-sufficiency. Before she could call out or approach further, a voice stopped her cold. "That's far enough." Olivia turned toward the sound. A man emerged from the tree line to her left, moving so quietly for his size that it seemed impossible. Ethan Everett was exactly what the clerk had said. Big, but that word did not come close to capturing the reality of him. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they strained the fabric of his worn flannel shirt. His arms were thick with muscle, visible even through the sleeves, and his chest was deep and powerful. He wore buckskin pants tucked into tall boots, and a gun belt sat low on his hips. But it was his face that caught Olivia's attention, square-jawed and sun-bronzed, with high cheekbones and a straight nose that looked like it might have been broken once. His hair was dark brown, falling past his shoulders in waves that suggested he cut it himself when it got too long. A beard covered the lower half of his face, neatly trimmed, and his eyes were a startling shade of deep brown, like rich earth after rain. Those eyes were currently fixed on her with an expression somewhere between suspicion and curiosity. He held a rifle in his hands, not pointed at her, but ready. "I'm looking for Ethan Everett," Olivia said, keeping her voice calm and steady. "You found him. Now state your business and be on your way." Olivia took a step forward, and the rifle shifted just slightly. She stopped but kept her eyes on his face. "My name is Olivia Grant. I came from St. Louis to find my brother, Samuel. He came to Great Bend 3 months ago, and his letters stopped coming 6 weeks ago. Everyone in town either knows nothing or will not tell me what they know. Someone suggested you might be able to help." Ethan was silent for a long moment, studying her. Most people would have dropped their gaze, uncomfortable under such scrutiny, but Olivia held steady. She looked right back at him, letting him see her determination, her worry, her desperation to find answers. Something shifted in his expression. The wariness remained, but something else crept in. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. Samuel Grant, he repeated slowly. Brown hair, young, eager, talked about making his fortune. Olivia's heart leaped. Yes, you know him. Is he alive? Where is he? Ethan lowered the rifle completely, his jaw tightening. He's alive, last I heard, but he fell in with the wrong people. What do you mean? Tell me everything. Ethan glanced at the sun, then back at her. It's a long story, and you have a long ride back to town. You should not be on that trail after dark. Then I will stay and listen to the story and ride back in the morning, Olivia said firmly. I did not come all this way to turn around without answers. Ethan's eyebrows rose slightly. You would stay here? Alone with a stranger in the mountains? I need to know what happened to my brother. If you mean me harm, you have had ample opportunity already. Olivia met his gaze directly. Besides, I'm a good judge of character. For the first time, something that might have been the ghost of amusement touched Ethan's face. Are you now? Yes. And I can see that you are not a man who would hurt a woman asking for help. They stood there for a moment, the mountain wind rustling through the pines, and Olivia realized that Ethan Everett was looking at her differently than other men did. He did not flinch from her direct gaze. He did not seem uncomfortable or unnerved. If anything, he looked intrigued. All right, he said finally. Put your horse in the corral. There's grain in the barrel. I will tell you what I know. Olivia led Daisy to the corral while Ethan disappeared inside the cabin. By the time she had unsaddled the mare and made sure she had water and feed, Ethan had emerged with 2 tin cups of coffee. He handed her one and gestured to a rough wooden bench near the cabin's front door. They sat, and Ethan began to speak. Your brother arrived in Great Bend about 3 months ago, like you said. He was looking for work and he got hired on at the Triple R Ranch, about 15 miles south of town. Belonged to a man named Roland Rickman. On the surface, it looks like a legitimate cattle operation. Under the surface, Rickman is running something else entirely. What do you mean? Olivia asked, though dread was already settling in her stomach. Rustling, for one. Stealing cattle from smaller ranches and altering the brands. But that is not the worst of it. Rickman has connections to some dangerous people, smugglers, and criminals passing through Kansas on their way to or from the territories. He provides them with fresh horses, supplies, and safe passage in exchange for a cut of their profits. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. And Samuel's involved in this? Not by choice, from what I understand. He figured out what was happening after a few weeks and tried to leave. Rickman does not let people leave once they know his secrets. Your brother is essentially a prisoner. They keep him working the ranch and they watch him. If he tries to run, they will kill him. How do you know all this? Olivia demanded, her hands shaking around the coffee cup. Ethan's expression darkened. I used to be a marshal years ago. I gave it up after I lost my family to cholera. Came out here to get away from everything, to live alone and not have to watch people die anymore. But old habits die hard. I see things when I come into town. I hear things. I've been watching Rickman's operation for months now, gathering information. Why have you not done anything? Olivia asked, and she heard the accusation in her own voice. Ethan did not seem offended. I am one man. Rickman has at least 12 men on his payroll, all of them armed and willing to kill. The local marshal's either incompetent or bought off, probably both. I've been trying to gather enough evidence to bring in federal marshals, but these things take time. My brother does not have time, Olivia said urgently. Every day he is there is another day he could be killed. I need to get him out. You cannot just ride onto the Triple R and demand they release him, Ethan said. They would shoot you before you got through the gate. Then what do you suggest? Olivia asked, meeting his eyes. I cannot simply leave him there. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in his large hands. I have been planning something, he admitted. A way to get evidence against Rickman and free the men he is holding against their will. Your brother is not the only one. There are at least 3 others in the same situation. Tell me your plan. It is dangerous. I do not care. Ethan looked at her then, really looked at her, and Olivia felt something shift in the air between them. His dark eyes held hers, searching, and she let him look. Let him see the determination, the fear, the love for her brother that drove her to travel across states and into the wild Kansas hills. "You really do see people, do not you?" Ethan said softly. "The way you look at them. I heard the men in town talking about it yesterday. Said you have a way of looking right through a person." "People do not like to be seen," Olivia replied. "It makes them uncomfortable." "Why does it not make me uncomfortable?" Ethan asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice. Olivia considered the question. "Maybe because you are not hiding anything. Or maybe because you are used to being alone, to being honest with yourself." Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe. Or maybe it is because when you look at me, I feel like you see more than just the surface, like you see something deeper." "What do I see?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "My soul," Ethan said simply. "You see my soul, and I do not mind that at all." The moment hung between them, charged with something neither of them could quite name. Then Ethan broke eye contact, clearing his throat. "It will be dark soon. You can sleep inside. I will take the lean-to." "I cannot take your bed," Olivia protested. "You can and you will. I have slept in worse places." He stood, draining the last of his coffee. "We will talk more in the morning. There is stew left from dinner. Help yourself." True to his word, Ethan gave her the cabin and disappeared into the gathering dusk. Olivia went inside and found the space surprisingly well kept for a bachelor's dwelling. Everything was neat and organized. The main room held a table, 2 chairs, a stove, and shelves lined with supplies. A single bed occupied one corner, made up with heavy wool blankets. Books lined a small shelf near the bed, their spines worn from reading. Olivia heated the stew and ate mechanically, her mind spinning with everything Ethan had told her. Samuel was alive but in danger. Ethan had a plan to help him. And there was something about the mountain man himself, something that drew her in despite the circumstances. She had meant what she said about seeing his soul. When she looked at Ethan Everett, she did not see a rough hermit or a dangerous loner. She saw a man carrying deep grief, a man who had lost everything and chosen solitude as a way to protect himself from more loss. But she also saw strength, honor, and a core of goodness that had not been dimmed by tragedy. That night, Olivia lay in Ethan's bed, wrapped in blankets that smelled of pine and wood smoke, and wondered what tomorrow would bring. She woke to the sound of an axe splitting wood. Dawnlight filtered through the cabin's single window, and Olivia rose quickly, smoothing her dress and checking her hair. Outside, she found Ethan working shirtless despite the morning chill, his muscled back gleaming with a light sheen of sweat as he brought the axe down in powerful, controlled swings. He looked up when she emerged, and Olivia forced herself not to stare at the expanse of his chest, the defined muscles of his stomach, the sheer raw power of him. "Morning," he said, setting the axe aside and reaching for his shirt. "There is coffee on the stove." "Thank you." Olivia retreated inside, feeling oddly flustered. She poured coffee and took a moment to collect herself. This was not the time to be noticing how attractive Ethan Everett was. Samuel needed her focus. When Ethan came inside, fully dressed now, he sat across from her at the table and laid out his plan. "Rickman is expecting a shipment in 3 days. Stolen goods from a train robbery in Colorado. He's going to move them through his ranch and then north toward Nebraska. Federal marshals have been tracking this gang for months, but they have not been able to catch them with the goods. If we can get word to the marshals about exactly when and where the exchange is happening, they can raid the ranch and arrest everyone involved." "How do we get word to the marshals?" Olivia asked. "There's a federal marshal I know in Dodge City. I trust him. We ride there, give him the information, and he brings a team back to conduct the raid. During the confusion, we get your brother and the other men out." "That's a long ride to Dodge City and back," Olivia said. "Will we have time?" "If we leave today, we can make it. It's about 60 miles. We ride hard, change horses halfway, and we can be there by tomorrow afternoon. The marshal can have his team assembled and back here by the night of the exchange." Olivia nodded. "Then we should leave immediately." "Are you certain about this?" Ethan asked, his dark eyes serious. "This is not going to be easy. The ride will be hard, and when we come back, there will be gunfire. People might die. You could get hurt." "Samuel is my brother," Olivia said firmly. "I am not leaving Kansas without him." Ethan held her gaze for a moment, then nodded. "All right then. We ride together." They prepared quickly. Ethan packed supplies and saddled his 2 horses, both of them strong and clearly built for endurance. He gave Olivia the slightly smaller of the 2, a solid buckskin gelding named Buck. "He is steady and smart," Ethan told her. "Trust him, and he will take care of you." They returned Daisy to the corral with extra feed and water, then set out south and west toward Dodge City. The pace Ethan set was aggressive but sustainable, and Olivia was grateful for the years she'd spent riding back in St. Louis. She kept up without complaint, though her legs ached and her back protested the long hours in the saddle. Ethan proved to be a surprisingly easy traveling companion. He was quiet, but not silent, pointing out landmarks and wildlife, making sure she had water and rest when needed. He never questioned her ability to keep up, and he treated her like a capable partner rather than a burden. They stopped at a small ranch halfway to change horses and rest for a few hours. The family who owned it knew Ethan and welcomed them warmly. The wife, a cheerful woman named Sarah, fussed over Olivia and insisted they eat a proper meal before continuing. "I have not seen Ethan bring anyone around in years," Sarah said quietly, while Ethan was outside tending to the horses. "You must be special." "We only just met," Olivia said, feeling her cheeks warm. "I need his help finding my brother." Sarah gave her a knowing look. "Still, Ethan does not help just anyone. He has a good heart, even if he tries to hide it." They rode on in the afternoon, fresh horses beneath them, and reached Dodge City as the sun was setting on the second day. The town was larger and rougher than Great Bend, filled with cattle pens and saloons, drovers and gamblers. Ethan led them directly to a hotel, securing 2 rooms before heading to find the marshal. "Stay here," he told Olivia. "Rest. I will be back soon." But Olivia had not come this far to wait in a hotel room. "I'm coming with you." Ethan looked like he wanted to argue, then seemed to think better of it. "You are stubborn." "Yes." The marshal's office was near the center of town. Marshal William Cade was a lean man in his 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. His expression shifted from surprise to pleased recognition when he saw Ethan. "Ethan Everett, I thought you had become a ghost in those mountains." "Not quite." Ethan shook his hand, then introduced Olivia. "We have information about Roland Rickman's operation. The Colorado train robbery gang is making an exchange at his ranch in 3 days." Cade's demeanor shifted immediately. All business now. "Tell me everything." Ethan laid out the details, including the information about Samuel and the other men being held against their will. Cade listened intently, asking pointed questions, taking notes. "This is exactly what we need," Cade said when Ethan finished. "I can have a team of 6 marshals ready to ride out tomorrow at first light. We will coordinate the raid for the night of the exchange. But Ethan, this is going to be dangerous. Rickman will not go quietly." "I know," Ethan said, "but we cannot let this opportunity pass." Cade's eyes shifted to Olivia. "Miss Grant, I understand your brother is caught up in this situation. I want you to know that we will do everything possible to get him out safely." "Thank you, Marshal," Olivia said, "but I am going to be there as well." "Absolutely not," Cade said immediately. "This is a federal operation. We cannot have civilians in the middle of a raid." "My brother does not know you are coming," Olivia argued. "He might not trust you, but he will trust me. I need to be there." Cade looked at Ethan, who shrugged. "She is right, and I have learned that arguing with her is pointless." "I cannot officially sanction this," Cade said, frowning. "But I cannot stop you from being in the general vicinity either. Just stay out of the line of fire." They finalized the details and returned to the hotel as full darkness settled over Dodge City. Ethan walked Olivia to her room, hesitating outside her door. "You did well today," he said. "The riding, the planning, all of it. You are tougher than you look." "I have had to be," Olivia replied. "After our parents died, it was just Samuel and me. I had to take care of both of us." "How old were you?" Ethan asked gently. 17. Samuel was 14. I worked as a teacher, took in sewing at night. We managed." She met his eyes. "What about you? You said you lost your family to cholera." Pain flickered across Ethan's face, but he did not look away. "My wife and daughter. 8 years ago. Elizabeth was 30. Anna was 5. His voice was steady, but Olivia could hear the grief beneath it. "I was away tracking outlaws. When I came back, they were already sick. They died within days of each other. I could not save them, could not do anything but watch. Without thinking, Olivia reached out and took his hand. His fingers were calloused and warm, dwarfing hers. I'm so sorry. It is why I left civilization, Ethan continued. I could not stay in a place that reminded me of them, could not keep doing a job that had kept me away when they needed me most. So I came to the mountains and built a life where I did not have to care about anyone, or have anyone care about me. Is that really what you want? Olivia asked softly. To be alone forever? Ethan looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face. I thought it was. For years I was certain of it, but lately I'm not so sure. The air between them felt heavy with possibility. Olivia knew she should let go of his hand, step back, maintain proper distance, but she did not want to. For the first time since arriving in Kansas, she felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. Thank you for helping me find Samuel, she whispered. You are welcome, Ethan replied, his voice rough. Olivia, I need you to know something. Tomorrow, when we go back, things might not go the way we plan. If something happens to me, you get to Samuel and you run, promise me. Nothing is going to happen to you, Olivia said firmly. Promise me anyway. I promise, but only if you promise the same. If things go wrong, you do not play hero. You survive. Ethan's mouth curved in a slight smile. You drive a hard bargain. So I have been told. They stood there for another moment, neither wanting to break the connection. Finally, Ethan squeezed her hand gently and released it. Get some rest. We leave at dawn. Olivia watched him walk to his own room down the hall, then closed her door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. She had known Ethan Everett for less than 2 days, but already she felt something she had never expected to feel, something that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. The ride back to Great Bend took less time than the journey out, pushing the horses hard with Marshal Cade and his team following behind. They stopped only briefly to rest the animals and grab food, reaching the outskirts of Great Bend by late afternoon on the 3rd day. Ethan led them to a ridge overlooking the Triple R Ranch. From their vantage point, they could see the layout clearly. The main house sat at the center, surrounded by several outbuildings, barns, and corrals. Men moved about below, going through the motions of ranch work, but Olivia could see armed guards positioned at strategic points. Your brother will likely be in the bunkhouse, Ethan told her, pointing to a long, low building near the back of the property. That is where Rickman keeps the men he is watching closely. Marshal Cade studied the ranch through field glasses. We will wait until dark, then move into position. When the exchange happens, that is when we make our move. Ethan, you and Miss Grant stay back until we have secured the main threats. Agreed, Ethan said. They waited as the sun sank lower, tension building with each passing minute. Olivia found herself sitting next to Ethan, their shoulders touching, drawing comfort from his solid presence. Are you afraid? She asked quietly. Always, Ethan admitted. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. The trick is not letting it control you. I am afraid too, Olivia confessed. Afraid we will be too late. Afraid Samuel is already hurt or worse. Afraid of losing him after coming this far. Ethan turned to look at her, his dark eyes serious. We will get him out. I swear it. You cannot promise that. Maybe not. But I can promise that I will do everything in my power to make it happen. You came all this way for your brother. That kind of love, that kind of loyalty. It means something. It has to. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back. When this is over, will you go back to your mountain? I do not know, Ethan said honestly. Will you go back to St. Louis? I do not know either. They fell silent, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and red. When darkness finally came, it brought with it a chill wind and the distant howl of coyotes. Marshal Cade gathered his team. Remember, we want Rickman and his lieutenants alive if possible. But if they fight, you defend yourselves. Primary objective is securing the stolen goods and freeing the prisoners. Move out. The marshals disappeared into the darkness, moving like shadows toward the ranch. Ethan and Olivia followed at a distance, staying low and quiet. They reached a position near the bunkhouse just as activity erupted at the main house. Lanterns were lit and several wagons rolled into the yard. Men emerged from the house to meet them, and Olivia could hear the low murmur of voices, the clink of bottles, the creak of wagon wheels. "They are starting the exchange," Ethan whispered. "Any minute now." Right on cue, Marshal Cade's voice rang out through the night. "Federal marshals! Nobody move!" Chaos erupted. Men shouted, guns were drawn, and suddenly the night exploded with gunfire. Olivia pressed herself flat against the ground as bullets whined overhead. Ethan covered her body with his, sheltering her with his bulk. "Stay down," he commanded, then raised his head to assess the situation. The marshals had the element of surprise, but Rickman's men were fighting back hard. The firefight was intense but brief. Within minutes, several of Rickman's men were down, and others were throwing down their weapons and raising their hands. "Now," Ethan said, grabbing Olivia's hand. They ran in a crouch toward the bunkhouse. The door was locked, and Ethan kicked it open with one powerful blow. Inside, 5 men were huddled away from the windows, fear evident on their faces. "Samuel Grant!" Olivia called out. "Samuel!" A young man turned, his eyes going wide with disbelief. "Olivia?" She would have recognized her brother anywhere, though he was thinner than she remembered and bore the marks of hard labor and worry. She ran to him, throwing her arms around him. "Oh, thank God," she sobbed. "You are alive! You are alive!" "How did you find me?" Samuel asked, his voice shaking. "How did you get here?" "I will explain everything, but we need to go now," Olivia said. She turned to the other men. "All of you, come with us. The marshals are taking down Rickman's operation. You are free." Ethan ushered them out of the bunkhouse and toward the ridge where the horses waited. Behind them, the sounds of the raid continued, but it was clear the marshals had won. Men were being rounded up, hands tied, forced to their knees in the yard. They reached the horses, and Ethan helped Samuel onto one of the spare mounts. The other, freed men found horses among those left by the marshals. Marshal Cade appeared out of the darkness, a cut on his forehead, but otherwise unharmed. "We got them all," he reported. "Rickman is in custody, along with the smugglers and his foreman. The evidence is solid. They will be going to prison for a long time." He looked at Samuel. "You and the others will need to give statements, but you are free to go." Samuel nodded, looking dazed. "Thank you, Marshal. Thank you all." They rode back to Great Bend as a group, arriving in the early hours of the morning. The town was still asleep, unaware of the drama that had unfolded at the R. Marshal Cade took the freed men to the marshal's office to get their statements, promising they could leave town once the paperwork was complete. Ethan brought Olivia and Samuel to Miller's boarding house. Margaret Miller opened the door in her nightgown, took one look at their exhausted faces, and immediately set about making coffee and preparing rooms without asking questions. "You can explain in the morning," she said kindly. "For now, rest." Olivia sat with Samuel in the boarding house parlor, both of them too wired to sleep just yet. Ethan had gone to stable the horses but said he would return. "Tell me everything," Olivia said, holding her brother's hands. Samuel told his story, how he had been excited to work at the R at first, impressed by the size of the operation and Rickman's promises of good wages. How he had gradually realized something was wrong, seeing cattle with altered brands, overhearing conversations about smuggling routes. How he had tried to leave and been threatened, told that if he spoke to anyone or tried to run, they would kill him and make it look like an accident. "I was so scared," Samuel admitted, tears streaming down his face. "I thought I would never get out. I stopped writing to you because I did not want Rickman to know I had family who might come looking for me. I thought if you forgot about me, at least you would be safe." "I could never forget about you," Olivia said fiercely. "You are my brother. I would have torn Kansas apart to find you." "Who is the big man?" Samuel asked. "The one who helped you?" Before Olivia could answer, the door opened and Ethan entered. He looked even larger in the confines of the small parlor, but his expression was gentle as he approached. "This is Ethan Everett," Olivia said. "He is the one who knew where you were and helped plan the raid. Without him, we never would have found you." Samuel stood and extended his hand. "Thank you, sir. I owe you my life." Ethan shook his hand, his large one engulfing Samuel's. "You owe me nothing. Your sister did most of the work. She is the one who would not give up." "That sounds like Olivia," Samuel said with a weak smile. They talked for a while longer, but exhaustion was catching up with all of them. Samuel went to his room, and Olivia walked Ethan to the door. "What happens now?" she asked. The marshals will need a few days to finish processing everything, Ethan said. After that, you and Samuel are free to return to St. Louis if you want. What will you do? Ethan was quiet for a moment. I'm not sure. Going back to the mountains seems less appealing than it used to. Why is that? Olivia asked, though her heart was already racing with hope. Because I met a woman who looks right through me and sees my soul, Ethan said softly, and I find that I do not want to be away from her. Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes. Ethan, You do not have to say anything now, he interrupted gently. You have your brother back. That was the important thing. But I want you to know that these last few days, riding with you, planning with you, seeing your strength and courage, it has reminded me that there is more to life than hiding from pain. You make me want to be part of the world again. I feel the same, Olivia whispered. When I look at you, I see someone who has suffered but not broken, someone strong and good and honorable. I see someone I could... She trailed off, afraid to say the words. Someone you could what? Ethan prompted, stepping closer. Someone I could love, Olivia finished, her voice barely audible. Ethan reached out and cupped her face in his large, calloused hands. I've been alone for so long. I forgot what it felt like to care about someone, to want to protect them not out of duty, but because the thought of them being hurt tears me apart. But these last few days with you, I remembered, and I do not want to forget again. He leaned down, and Olivia rose on her toes to meet him halfway. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle at first, tentative, then deepened as years of loneliness and longing poured out from both of them. Ethan's arms came around her, pulling her against his chest, and Olivia felt safe and cherished in a way she never had before. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. Stay in Great Bend, Ethan said urgently. You and Samuel, start over here. I will come down from the mountain. We can build a life together if you are willing. Yes, Olivia said without hesitation. Yes, I am willing. They kissed again, and this time Olivia let herself believe in the possibility of happiness, of a future that held more than just survival and duty. She had come to Kansas to find her brother, but she had found something else as well. She had found a man who understood her, who did not flinch from her direct gaze, who saw her soul as clearly as she saw his. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Marshal Cade took detailed statements from everyone involved. Roland Rickman and his men were transported to a federal prison to await trial. The stolen goods were returned to their rightful owners. The other men who had been held against their will at the RRR departed for their homes, grateful to be free. Samuel recovered quickly, both physically and emotionally. The resilience of youth served him well, and he spoke eagerly of starting fresh. When Olivia told him about her and Ethan, he was surprised but supportive. He is a good man, Samuel said, a bit intimidating, but good, and I have never seen you smile the way you do when you look at him. Ethan spent those days going back and forth between his mountain cabin and Great Bend, bringing down supplies and making arrangements. He sold his furs and some of his horses, converting his resources into cash. He spoke with the land office about purchasing property near town, a place where he could build a home. Barm. I want somewhere we can raise a family, he told Olivia one evening as they walked along the edge of town, watching the sunset. Somewhere with space and good land, but close enough to Great Bend that you are not isolated. You are used to being around people, teaching. I do not want you to be lonely. As long as I am with you, I will not be lonely, Olivia assured him, squeezing his hand. Still, I want you to be happy. Really happy. They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Great Bend. Samuel stood as witness, along with Marshal Cade, who had stayed in town to finish paperwork and had become a friend. Margaret Miller cried happy tears, and half the town showed up, curious to see the mountain man and the woman who could see souls get married. Olivia wore a simple dress of pale blue, and Ethan wore new clothes that fit his large frame properly. When the preacher asked if he took Olivia to be his wife, Ethan's voice was strong and clear. I do. Before God and everyone here, I promise to love her, protect her, and stand by her for all my days. Olivia's vows were equally heartfelt. I take you, Ethan Everett, as my husband. I promise to see you, truly see you, in all your strength and all your vulnerability, and to love every part of what I see. They sealed their vows with a kiss, and Olivia felt like her heart might burst with joy. Ethan had purchased a beautiful piece of land 5 miles north of Great Bend, at the base of rolling hills with a creek running through it. Together, with Samuel's help and hired workers from town, they built a home, not as large as a ranch house, but bigger than Ethan's mountain cabin, with enough rooms for a growing family and wide windows that let in the Kansas sunlight. They moved in on a crisp autumn day, and that night, lying in bed in their new home, Ethan pulled Olivia close. "Are you happy?" he asked, his voice rumbling in his chest beneath her ear. "More than I ever thought possible," Olivia answered honestly. "Are you? Do you miss the solitude of the mountain?" "Not even a little bit," Ethan said. "I thought I wanted to be alone, but I was wrong. I just needed the right person to come along and remind me that life is worth living fully, not just surviving." "I love you," Olivia whispered. "I love you too," Ethan replied, tilting her face up to kiss her. "You saw my soul when everyone else just saw a hermit. You saw who I really was, who I could be again. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." They made love that night in their new home, a joining that was both tender and passionate, a celebration of two souls finding each other against all odds. The months that followed were filled with the work of building a life together. Ethan took on occasional work tracking for the marshals when needed, using his skills to help bring criminals to justice without having to commit to full-time law enforcement. Samuel worked with him, learning tracking and survival skills, finding purpose and confidence in the work. Olivia started teaching again, holding classes for the children of Great Bend and the surrounding ranches in the front room of their home. She loved having students again, shaping young minds, making a difference in her community. At night, she and Ethan would sit on their porch, watching the stars come out over the Kansas prairie, and talk about everything and nothing. He told her stories of his time as a marshal before tragedy struck, of his wife Elizabeth and daughter Anna, learning to speak of them without the crushing weight of grief that had silenced him for so long. Olivia told him about growing up in St. Louis, about the burden of responsibility she had carried for Samuel, about the loneliness of being different, of seeing too clearly into people and having them shy away from it. "You never have to hide that with me," Ethan assured her. "I want you to see me, all of me. I never want there to be secrets between us." "There will not be," Olivia promised. A year after their wedding, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. Ethan's reaction was a mixture of joy and terror that made her laugh even as tears streamed down her face. "What if something goes wrong?" he asked, his big hands gentle on her still flat stomach. "What if I lose you like I lost Elizabeth?" "You will not lose me," Olivia said firmly, covering his hands with her own. "I am strong, and we will have the doctor from Dodge City come when it is time. Everything will be all right." "How can you be sure?" "Because I can see the future we're going to have together," Olivia said, smiling. "I can see children running through this house, filling it with laughter. I can see us growing old together, gray-haired and content. I can see it all, Ethan, and it is beautiful." He kissed her then, pouring all his fear and hope and love into the kiss. Their son was born on a warm spring morning in 1880, healthy and strong, with a powerful set of lungs that announced his arrival to the world. They named him Thomas, after Ethan's father, and Olivia had never seen her husband more tender than when he held his newborn son for the first time. "He is perfect," Ethan whispered, tears running unashamedly down his face. "You are perfect. How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky," Olivia said, exhausted but happy beyond measure. "We found each other." Samuel, now 22 and engaged to a rancher's daughter named Catherine, stood in the doorway with a huge smile on his face. "I am an uncle," he announced proudly. "This calls for a celebration." The house filled with friends over the next few days. Margaret Miller brought casseroles and blankets. Marshal Cade sent a telegram of congratulations from Dodge City. The families whose children Olivia taught brought gifts and well wishes. "You have built something real here," Sarah, the woman from the ranch where they had changed horses on the ride to Dodge City, told Olivia. "A family, a community. It is wonderful to see." As Thomas grew, he was followed by a daughter 2 years later, Emily, who had her father's dark eyes and her mother's ability to see right into people. Then another son, James, and finally another daughter, Rose. The house was filled with the chaos and joy of children, exactly as Olivia had envisioned. Ethan proved to be a devoted father, patient and playful, teaching his children to ride and track and survive in the wilderness, but also reading to them every night and never missing an opportunity to tell them he loved them. "I missed so much with Anna," he told Olivia one night after putting the children to bed. "I will not make that mistake again. This is what matters. Family, being present, not running away from life because it might hurt." Samuel and Catherine married and built a home on the adjacent property, raising cattle and working closely with Ethan. The two families were intertwined, Sunday dinners and holidays and daily life shared between them. Samuel named his firstborn daughter Olivia in honor of the sister who had crossed states and braved danger to save him. The years passed, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the changing seasons. Great Bend grew and prospered. Kansas became more settled, the wild edge of the frontier gradually smoothing out into civilization. But there remained something untamed about the land, something that called to people like Ethan and Olivia, who understood that true freedom came not from isolation, but from connection, from choosing to be vulnerable enough to let someone truly see you. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ethan took Olivia back to his old mountain cabin. It still stood, weathered but solid, and they spent the night there alone, the children staying with Samuel and Catherine. "Do you ever regret leaving this place?" Olivia asked as they sat outside under the stars. "Not once," Ethan said firmly. "This cabin was my refuge when I needed to hide from the world, but you taught me that hiding is not living. You taught me to be brave enough to love again, to risk the pain of loss for the joy of connection. That is the real courage." "We taught each other," Olivia corrected gently. "You taught me that being seen does not have to be a burden, that the right person will not flinch from who I really am, but will celebrate it. You gave me permission to be fully myself." They made love under the stars that night, and Olivia felt the same rush of emotion she had felt on their wedding night, the same sense of coming home to a place she belonged. More years passed. Their children grew into strong, capable adults. Thomas took over the ranch, expanding it with his father's guidance. Emily became a teacher like her mother, opening a school in Great Bend that served children from all over the county. James followed in his father's footsteps, becoming a tracker and occasionally working with the marshals. Rose married a lawyer and moved to Wichita, but visited often, bringing her own children to play with their cousins. Ethan's hair turned silver, and Olivia's auburn hair gained streaks of white, but their love remained as strong as ever. They still sat on their porch every evening, watching the sunset, holding hands and talking about their day. "Do you remember when we first met?" Olivia asked one evening when they were both in their 60s. "You pointed a rifle at me." Ethan chuckled. "Not my finest moment, but you were not afraid. I knew you would not hurt me. I could see it in your eyes." "You could see my soul," Ethan said, repeating the words he had spoken so long ago. "And I could see yours. That is when I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were the one. That I could spend the rest of my life with you and never grow tired of looking into those eyes that see everything." "I will never grow tired of being seen by you," Olivia replied, leaning her head on his broad shoulder. "You were right all those years ago. I do not just look through people. With you, I look deeper. I see your soul, and it is beautiful." They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the sun painted the Kansas sky in shades of gold and crimson. In the distance, they could hear the laughter of grandchildren playing, the low of cattle, the sound of life continuing in all its messy, beautiful complexity. "No regrets?" Ethan asked, as he did sometimes. "Not a single one," Olivia answered, as she always did. "You?" "Only that I did not find you sooner," Ethan said. "But maybe we needed to live the lives we lived, go through what we went through, to be ready for each other." "That is a very wise observation," Olivia said, smiling. "I have a very wise wife. It rubs off." They laughed together, the easy laughter of two people who had built a life of love and trust, who had weathered storms and celebrated joys, who had chosen each other every single day for decades. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Ethan pulled Olivia closer, and she settled into the embrace of the man who had once been called a hermit, a mountain man, someone to be feared or avoided. She knew better. She had always known better. She had looked into Ethan Everett's soul that first day on the mountain, and she had seen a man worthy of love, a man capable of great tenderness beneath his strength, a man who needed only to be truly seen to bloom back into life. And he had seen her in return, seen past the surface to the woman who carried her own burdens and strengths, who needed someone brave enough to be seen by her without flinching. They had found each other in the wild Kansas hills, two souls recognizing their match, and they had built a love that would last not just their lifetimes, but echo through the generations that came after. The town of Great Bend remembered them long after they were gone. The school Emily founded carried her mother's name. The ranch Thomas ran thrived for generations. The stories of how Olivia Grant had ridden into the Wild West alone to save her brother, and how Ethan Everett had come down from his mountain for love, became the stuff of local legend. But for Ethan and Olivia themselves, the legend was less important than the everyday reality of choosing each other, seeing each other, and loving each other through all the years they were given. On their 50th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, Ethan stood slowly from his chair and raised a glass. "To my wife," he said, his voice still strong despite his years, "who saw past the hermit to the man, who saw my soul and loved what she found there, who gave me back my life. Olivia, you are my greatest adventure, my deepest joy, and the love of my life. Here is to 50 years and to whatever years we have left." Olivia stood as well, taking his hand. "To my husband," she replied, her voice warm with emotion, "who was not afraid to be seen, who taught me that love is worth the risk, who built a beautiful life with me in this wild land. Ethan, you are my heart, today and always." They kissed to the cheers and applause of their family, and if there were tears in both their eyes, they were tears of gratitude and joy. That night, lying in bed in the home they had built together so many years ago, Ethan pulled Olivia close one more time. "Do you remember what I said to those men in town all those years ago?" he asked softly. "Which men?" Olivia murmured sleepily. "The ones who said you had a way of looking right through people, that it made them uncomfortable." "What did you say?" "I said, 'Then she sees my soul,' and I do not mind that at all." Olivia smiled in the darkness. "I remember. That was the moment I knew I was falling in love with you. The moment you were not afraid to be seen. Best thing I ever did," Ethan said, "was let you see me. And the best thing that ever happened to me was being seen by you." They fell asleep holding each other, two souls intertwined, two lives joined into one beautiful story of courage, love, and the Wild West. And if sometimes the wind whispered through the Kansas hills, carrying echoes of a time when the frontier was still wild and two people found each other against all odds, well, that was just the land remembering. Remembering the mountain man who came down from his isolation for love. Remembering the woman whose piercing gaze saw souls. Remembering the love story that began with a rifle pointed and ended with a lifetime of devotion. The land remembered, and the story lived on, a testament to the power of being truly seen, truly known, and truly loved. Years later, when both Ethan and Olivia had passed peacefully in their sleep within days of each other, as if neither could bear to be in the world without the other, their family gathered to celebrate their lives. The church in Great Bend was packed with people whose lives they had touched. Thomas stood at the front, looking remarkably like his father had in his prime, strong and steady. "My parents taught us many things," he said to the gathered crowd. "They taught us to work hard, to value family, to stand up for what is right. But the most important thing they taught us was this. Real love means seeing someone completely, all their light and all their shadows, and choosing to love them anyway." My father was a man who had lost everything and chosen isolation. My mother was a woman who saw too clearly and made people uncomfortable. They found each other, and in finding each other, they found themselves. That is their legacy. That is what they leave behind. Emily stood next, her mother's green eyes shining with tears. Mama used to tell me that I had her gift, the ability to see into people. When I was young, I thought it was a curse. People would shy away from me, avoid my gaze. But Mama taught me it was a gift if I used it with compassion. She taught me that seeing people truly is an act of love. And Papa taught me that being seen is an act of courage. Together, They showed us what it means to be brave enough to be vulnerable, strong enough to be tender, and wise enough to choose love every single day. The stories continued, each child and grandchild adding their memories, painting a picture of two extraordinary people who had built an ordinary life filled with extraordinary love. They were buried side by side on a hillside overlooking the ranch, beneath the endless Kansas sky. The headstone was simple, carved with their names and dates, and a single line that Emily had suggested: "Two souls who saw each other truly." The seasons continued to turn. The ranch continued to thrive under Thomas's capable management. The school Emily ran continued to shape young minds. The family continued to grow and flourish, carrying forward the values Ethan and Olivia had instilled in them. And sometimes, when the light was just right, you could stand on that hillside and look out over the land Ethan and Olivia had loved, and you could almost see them. Two figures on a porch, holding hands, watching the sunset together. A mountain man and a woman with piercing eyes who had found each other in the Wild West and built a love that transcended time itself. The story was over, but the love remained, woven into the fabric of the land, living on in the hearts of those who came after, a reminder that true love requires courage, vulnerability, and the willingness to be fully seen. And in the end, that was the greatest gift of all. Not the ranch, not the successful children, not the prosperity or the legacy. The greatest gift was the love itself, fierce and tender, strong and gentle, deep enough to see souls and brave enough to be seen. That was the story of Ethan Everett and Olivia Grant, a mountain man and a woman who could see souls, a hermit who came down from his isolation, a teacher who crossed states to save her brother and found love instead. Two people who looked at each other and saw past the surface to the truth beneath, and who chose to love what they found there. Their story became legend in Great Bend, Kansas, passed down through generations, embellished and refined until it became something almost mythical. But for those who had known them, who had seen the daily reality of their love, no embellishment was needed. The truth was beautiful enough. Two people who had been broken by loss and hardship, who had found each other in the wildness of the frontier, who had built a life of meaning and purpose, who had loved each other with everything they had until their final breaths. That was the story. That was the legacy. That was the love that endured beyond death, beyond time, beyond everything. And on quiet evenings, when the wind whispered through the Kansas hills and the sun painted the sky in gold and crimson, you could still feel it. The echo of that love, the warmth of it, the truth of it. Two souls who had seen each other truly and in seeing had found home. The mountain man had said it best all those years ago when the townspeople whispered about the woman with the piercing gaze. "She's got a way of looking right through you," they had said, voices tinged with discomfort and fear. And Ethan Everett had replied, his voice calm and certain, "Then she sees my soul." And he had been right. She had seen his soul, and he had seen hers, and that had made all the difference. That was the story. That was the truth. That was the love that changed everything. And it all began in the dusty wild town of Great Bend, Kansas, in the year 1878, when a woman with piercing green eyes walked into a saloon and made everyone uncomfortable, and a mountain man came down from his isolation because he was brave enough to be seen. The end of their individual stories, the beginning of their shared one. A love story for the ages, set against the backdrop of the Wild West, as real and solid as the Kansas earth itself, as enduring as the stars that witnessed their first kiss and their last breath. This was their story. This was their love. This was their legacy. And it lived on.